looking back over the past year, Billy, what have been the highlights for Moonstone compliance and for the industry in 2022?
Well, for Moonstone compliance, I think rolling out our new services has been challenging and exciting. The privacy governance and the labour law offerings that we have there, the webinars that we've ran, they've been very well attended. So that's probably been the single biggest highlight, that and trying to adapt to a post-COVID world. I think for the industry, I think the economy has been difficult. I think really high inflation, high interest rates has been a challenge. I think intermediaries are struggling to keep business on the books, but high interest rates and high inflation scenarios create new opportunities. There's opportunity for changes in investment strategy, there's opportunity for consolidation of insurance portfolio. But I think from a regulatory perspective, there's a couple of things in the pipeline, a couple of things have been published, which I think is going to, although published in this year, I think we're going to see the effects next year. I think the conduct of business returns is a big challenge to the industry. I think the starting point that the FSCA is using is that which they have applied at insurers, and I think the systems that insurers have in place and what your average FSP have in place are miles apart. It remains to be seen how successful that implementation is going to be. The amount of system development and also financial reporting development that is going to be required from FSPs is going to be significant. So it is critically important that FSPs partake in the trials, because that's going to be the high watermark. If we don't give the FSCA an indication of where we are at the moment, then they're going to start at a point where FSPs are going to play catch up the whole time. I think the declaration of crypto assets as a financial product is going to bring big challenges, although the licensing is only happening next year. I see considerable challenges there, and it remains to be seen how many FSPs are actually going to get involved in crypto, especially given what's happened with FTX, and if you follow the press, a couple of other big exchanges running into problems. So, it really, I'm not convinced there's going to be such a big intake in your normal advisor getting involved in that space. It just seems too risky. The anti-money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing requirements, the basically FICA stuff. They've recently published amendments to the schedule, so a lot of new entrants come into the FIC sphere, or the reporting accountable institution sphere, let me rather put it that way. You're looking at all credit providers now having to comply, and then motor dealers who, to a certain extent, have been involved as reporting institutions, or they might have been reporting because they are in some way rendering financial services, are now classified as dealers in high net or high worth goods. So basically all motor dealers in the country now have to come into that fray. So that's going to be a big challenge. And then more on the FAIS side, we saw on Friday the 2nd of December some amendments to the General Code of Conduct. Firstly, a new insertion, section 7.5 to the General Code, which now actually obliges financial services providers to advise clients when they're dealing with a product that's not considered a financial product in terms of the Act, that they've got to give warnings to the client that they don't enjoy the same protections, that there are risks. So the format of that still needs a bit of work, but it's now a requirement and it's effective immediately. And then something we've been waiting for years is an amendment to section 10.3 of the General Code, which now also exempts intermediaries collecting long-term premiums from the requirement to segregate funds as intended in section 10.1d. That's always been the case with short-term insurance, but now those long-term insurance premiums are also exempted. And that has a bunch of knock-on effect in terms of section 19.3 reporting, etc. It's long overdue. So I think that's some good news. Then I think the big thing that everybody is still waiting to see is what happens to COFI and the harmonization project that the FSCA is involved with. The harmonization project really entails harmonizing all the different financial sector laws to achieve the same outcomes, and to also have a consistency in definition where one definition is used in multiple pieces of legislation. That's an ongoing project. I can't see that COFI can be finalised until the harmonisation project has been finalised. So we'll have to wait and see. I think a lot of people aren't anxious about what's going to happen to us after COFI, and at this point, all I can say is, well, carry on as you're carrying on. A lot of what is in the current legislation will be conduct standards in terms of COFI or the Financial Sector Regulation Act. And any transition will be with a period of time allowed. So I don't think it's necessary to get panicky about it, but that's definitely the one thing that stays on the horizon and remains a question.
Do you have any thoughts about the implications of potential grey listing for the industry?
As a country, it should be of big concern. The impact of the grey listing on our clients is a little bit difficult to speculate on at the moment, because with the grey listing comes a list of requirements set by the FATF. Until we know what those requirements for remediation are going to be, we can't really gauge what the impact will be on financial services providers. But specifically people dealing with offshore investors into South Africa, I think there is going to be a lot of questions and a lot of more due diligence and a lot more reporting and KYC requirements. It's not going to preclude business, it's just going to make it more cumbersome.
Thank you for your time, Billy.